White Sox Car Chat on Zoom. I'm your host, Greg Gaub. The gang's all here. Dewan on his bike, and Don in his track room, and John, and Jim, and Dennis, and John, and Mike, and John, and Garth, and John, and everybody, and John, and all the non-Johns. This is chat number 251, not counting breaks and special whatevers for what it's worth. Let's talk about slot cars of any kind and all kinds, starting with show and tell. If anybody has anything they want to show or tell about. Project cars, what you got, Mr. Roberts?
Just something that I picked up through a carpenter friend of mine. When you make those mistakes when you're routing a track, and I had a brain fart and managed to leave the route that I was supposed to take. You have to fill it in. Some people recommend a Bondo or something to that effect. I tried the Bondo. Bondo melts, as it turns out. So what this fellow suggested was this.
Putty.
Durham water putty. Durham's water putty. And it does, like it says, it's rock hard. It does cure to being, very, very firm. And when the router goes through it, the router bit goes through it, it's a nice clean cut. And you have to wait, actually you could probably do it within a day or so, but I waited 3 or 4 days. So I just found it to be that much more effective than Bondo. It's a clean cut, and so far it's kept its solvency.
Nice. How long does, maybe John can tell, the other John, one of the other Johns, God, that's so funny.
Sounds like a brothel.
Can say, yeah. How long? So after you've opened it and used it, does it stay usable for a long period of time?
It's a powder.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Yeah, it's a very fine powder.
Yeah.
And,
there you go.
And so this can is ancient and it's still good. As long as you keep moisture out of it, it's fine.
Yeah.
So you don't have to keep it dry like other things. You don't have to keep it wet like other things. You have to keep it dry.
Yeah. I've never used it for repairing a track, although I've used it to make castings with, sort of the way John does. And it's pretty good at holding shapes and things like that. And it's cheap, or at least it used to be cheap. I hadn't bought it, I don't know. So it's been ancient, a long time ago.
Is it just a fine grade cement almost? Is that what it is?
No, it looks like it's ground up wood. I don't know what all is in there. Let's see. I've got
It's a light brown color, and you mix it up with water, and it works great. John's absolutely right. It's a really good one for fixing oopsies on tracks. Yeah, I've used it often.
Wow, sounds if you mix it to the right consistency, add a little maple syrup, it's breakfast.
I was just gonna say, can you mix it with different amounts of water, or is it one of those? It's got to be an exact amount, or it's.
You can do it with different amounts. You play with it.
That stuff is old school.
Old school.
Old tech.
Yep.
Sure.
So if you want, conceivably you could make it thin enough to pour into a mold.
Well, absolutely. Yeah.
And it would still harden and be strong.
It's, in my experience, it can be, and it can be fairly inconsistent if you don't get it mixed really well. Then the material becomes some of it gets like super hard, and then some of it may not dry for a long time. So, but you're just talking about water, so you just put it in a dehumidifier or something. Probably that would take care of it, those kind of issues. But
just make sure it's mixed really, really well when you use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe the temperature of the water you use can make a big difference too. Now, I don't know about any additives that you might put in it, like salt or something like that, but sand to give it to have more texture.
Could you also
open? Let's see if we can.
John, could you
Well-
also use alcohol to maybe really get everything to evaporate and make it harder? Would that work?
Yeah,
I don't see why I don't see how it could get any hotter.
it is extremely hard when it sets. Let me switch my
Yeah,
picture.
turn your background off.
Ooh, dink. Oh, this is so slow. I'm so slow.
Got it?
Okay, so I don't know if you can. Got so much light here. It may not be.
Yeah,
Like that.
that's the dry powder.
Yep, it's a very fine dry powder. I don't know if you can see that or not, but
Yeah.
it looks like
cornstarch.
it looks like flour almost, except it has a slight creamy yellow buttercream yellow.
Looks
color.
like it looks like something if it was in a baggie you'd get arrested for.
And you just get that at the hardware store, pretty much.
Yep.
Ace
As far
Hardware.
as I know, like I said, I haven't bought any in a long time. I have another big box that's about this big. You know, it's a similar kind of cardboard box, and it's still good. I probably bought that 30 years ago. But anyway,
Durham's rock hard water putty. Good
that's
suggestion.
it, man. John's got it right on the beam.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've heard that before for fixing routed track flubs, but
Good
excellent
to fix your
reminder.
furniture too, when you get gouges and things like that in your baseboards.
So is it sandable as well then?
Absolutely, yeah. Once
So
it
you
sets
could
up,
also maybe use it for like a body filler on a body or something as well.
Yeah, I don't know how well it would stick to the plastic.
yeah, you get that. So then you probably want to use some of that. Let's see, I've got some here. Anyway, this new material, it's acrylic, I believe.
Really?
It's UV hardened body filler. Comes in pretty fine stuff. It's in a tube. It's real soft, and it's workable until you put UV on it, and then, but you can't it can't be very thick because it's gray or almost black, so the UV can't penetrate all the way through more than I think it's something like a quarter of an inch max, and that would take a strong light, I would think. But
All right, good
Small
stuff. Thank you,
layers.
John. And Mr. Weber, what would you like to share? You got your hand up.
yeah, this is kind of a share and a question. Let's see, I need to turn the light back on here. Oh, we'll get there. Okay, so this is a model I've been working on for quite some time. It's made appearances on this program several times. Ferrari 1955 121 LM. Anyway, it's a resin body, and I've decided I would put headlights and taillights in it. And so I cut these holes in, and I have some acrylic fingernail thingies to go in as the glass portion here, or plexiglass portion here over the fairing over the headlight. Any great ideas about how to affix those and to get them to fit flush, other than just fiddling with sanding materials and that sort of thing?
That's a toughie.
Excuse me.
Well, you know what? I use I think it's a micro something product that military builders use for canopies and so forth. And that really works well, because if you use super glue, it'll haze the clear usually. So
Okay.
I think it's microscale, but I can't remember what it's called.
Canopy, you talking about canopy glue? They call it
Yeah,
canopy glue.
yeah, and it works really well, actually, believe it or not.
I've got some, but I've never used it. I just got it the other day, so I thought maybe.
And the great thing is that you can like when you first use it and you put gobs on, you think, oh no, and it dries absolutely crystal clear
Cool,
and thin. Yeah.
cool. Could you even use it maybe as a material that you would cast, sort of? You know,
I haven't tried to do that, but I don't know. There's a lot of shrinkage.
oh, okay, okay.
I think that's how it works as an adhesive. It just really grabs as it shrinks.
You're not going to be able to see that, but that's some of those. This is
Oh yeah, that. By the way, John, that's a great idea.
I picked it up on somebody else's modeling tips on Slot Forum or one of the boards.
Mhm.
And you get this box of 100 pieces, and there's about 4 or 5 different sizes, I think, and each size has a different shape, sort of. They taper, and they're anyway, they're soft, fairly soft, so they would seem to like they would scratch, but we'll try applying a clear acrylic to sort of firm them up some. But
Well, I was going to say, and then once you put the micro stuff on it, I think it's called crystal clear. Don't quote me on that. You can put acrylic over it, and it just hardens it even more. So yeah.
Okay. Well, these things, I think I got this on Amazon for, I don't know, $6 or something like that. So it's more than I'll ever need.
You just wouldn't want to be observed picking that up in the store, would you?
Why? What's wrong with a Manny Penny? What's the matter with you? Everybody has one.
I'm just, hypothesizing. It's a good idea. I like it too. It's quite, yeah, it's clever.
Let's see. I have another model that will be next. Assuming this method is successful, it'll be this little 1962 246 SP Dino, which is a modified Bergman body.
Yeah, that one turned out really, really well. You did a lot of work to that to reshape it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's going to hold up very well in front end collision, but the real one, the 1-to-1, didn't either.
Oh, just do demonstration laps at Goodwood. You'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I can sell it for that same kind of money too. Anyway, that's it. That's all I have. Thank you very much. Thanks for your tips.
All righty. Thanks for.
You're the one with the tips.
Oh, no.
If anybody comes up with more help for John, absolutely.
Fingertips, right?
Well, I think
Fingertips.
maybe I wasn't paying attention and missed it, but wasn't one of the questions like once you glue the nail on, and you get good glue and everything, how do you trim the nail so that it's not extending beyond?
I don't know how you do it.
That's what
I think you might have to trim it.
Anybody
You might have to
any
trim it first. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, just take a nail that you probably aren't going to need because it's too big or whatever, and then just start slicing on it or dremeling it or whatever and see what works.
Can't possibly see this, but there's a couple that I've been working on. It's right here on the tip of my finger. I used a Sharpie to try to lay it on there because you can squeeze it down so you can get it right down onto the contour of the shape, and then use a Sharpie to try to draw an outline where you need to trim the.
Well, John, have you thought of just doing like a little paper or cardboard template, perhaps, and then?
Yeah, there's that. This in my noggin, this is a more direct method. So you try that first. And
what did you actually cut it or trim it with?
What did I?
Yeah.
I cut it with scissors, some good, some like good sharp scissors, and then I've been using some fine sandpaper or fine sanding foam, or some of those little sanding sticks that they carry at Hobby Lobby.
You know what? If you really want to, just use an emery board. You'll be right at home.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if it's a nail, an emery board should work.
Yeah. And
a couple of alternative glues would be probably E6000 glue, which is another one that dries clear, and that tends to set up a little firmer, I find, than the next alternative, which is GS Hypo, which has been discussed on the channel. It's a GS Hypo is another translucent setup glue that's a little bit more like silicone. It peels away quite readily. That's the nice thing about that one.
Okay. I wouldn't
use it for your lens, I don't think, but it is an option.
I was reading some of Gio's posts about his light installations, and I think he mentioned that particular.
Yes.
I'm not familiar with it at all. I hadn't seen it before, but so there's some
GS will be my choice actually for gluing lenses or windscreen on a slot car. The other thing that you guys were talking about, I think it's good for static models.
There's Evergreen's canopy glue. That's
probably the same stuff, John. Yeah. Now the other advantage though with that stuff is that if you do have a hard knock, it doesn't break the canopy or the glass or anything. They just pop out, and then you can just readhere them. Yeah. So the part doesn't break; it just pops out. That's the other advantage.
This looks to be about the same consistency as Elmer's or something like that.
Yeah, that's honestly, I think that's what it is. I think it's watered down Elmer's glue. I think that's really what it is. And then you put it in a smaller container and charge 10 times as much. That's
EVA.
The main arena in which I've seen that stuff used is Model Aero. They use it for polycarbonate canopies on their aeroplanes.
Right. It's new to me, so I haven't used it yet, but we'll see. I'm sure it works.
Here we go.
And it's cheap. That big old bottle of it's $3.49. So.
Yeah, if you take a look at my first 356 build for anybody who's seen the channel, that's what I used to put the windscreen on the model.
Okay, cool.
All righty, sounds like it's time to move on. Go ahead, Dennis.
Okay, today is basically just saying that I'm sitting in my new spot at Electric Dreams, and I'm trying to see whether you could see the sign up on the wall there.
Samson's Workshop.
Samson's Workshop, right? And difficult to see, but the Samson's piece is in blue and the workshop's in silver. And I said to them, so what's the pink? And if you look right on the edges of the sign, you can see the pink is around the edges, right? So, I have this little spot with a nice little, very deep table, which is nice because then I can push computers and things to the back of it. It sits in the workshop underneath the stairs that go now from that go up to the mezzanine that's up at the top of the above me. You could see the mezzanine floor here. I'm in the back of the I'm in the back of the store where all the warehouse is, where all the cars are. And so I'm working here on Wednesdays now rather than Thursdays, which is so for the 11 o'clock meetings, I can basically listen in while I'm working. And for the 4 o'clock meetings, I will probably be in from my car. Other than that, nothing much to report on this end until we get to Club Corner, and then we can talk about the big scale auto race that happened over the weekend.
Dennis, there is one thing you should be adding to that sign, though.
LEDs.
No, an R circle. You should register it. No, register. R circle.
I missed all of that because I put the computer down and ripped my ears out of my
I just said that. Sorry, there was just one thing you should add to your sign, and that's an R circle, so that no one steals your trademark.
Okay, yeah. This is the reason that Marco and others would not let me in the store when all the work was being done here, which I was quite happy about, of course, because it meant that I didn't have to do the work. But it was so that this little area was a complete surprise to me when I got back. So I have this nice little spot back here now. Really
You
good.
call it work, man. I mean, when I was, I think I was 12. So there was a toy shop nearby where I live.
Yeah.
And that's where basically I was working for the summer months. I mean, so basically I was the demonstrator, all people coming to buy toys for the kids, and I was showing how this shit was working, like transform and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was the best time of my life.
Yeah.
Anyway, what is that Porsche that is on your table down there? You have a yellow Porsche?
Oh, at the back there, that's a 1/18th scale, it's a 1/18th diecast, and it's here because I have a customer who wants me to make a 1/24th scale car from a plastic kit and paint it exactly like that.
Okay.
That's all that is. And right now I'm sitting busy with a Scale Auto Porsche 911, doing the tires for a customer, and so that's what I'm up to. So we'll talk again later.
Very nice.
Wait, are you gonna talk about the race that you had on the weekend?
When Club Corner arrives, perhaps, yeah.
Well, I think Peter has his hand up. Peter, by all means, please. What have you got to show?
First of all, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
But it'd be nice if you were a little louder.
Okay. I'll try to yell. Yeah, I haven't been on in a while. Just things have been busy. I was at the show on Sunday the 2nd, and somebody said they saw you, John, but I was never able to track you down. Anyway, I mainly went just to sell some stuff. I picked up just 2 bodies, but I did get a call from one of the other guys in the area, and he's looking to create a class of US RRC cars using very mild motors, S-cans, old BWA motors or NC1 type, but gearing the snot out of them. So they have a bunch of these old bodies, and they wanted some chassis, and I sent some that I already make in Sidewinder version, but this one gentleman was looking more for angle winder because a lot of the bodies are too narrow to fit a 130 motor in Sidewinder configuration. So what I did is I come up with this little baby. It's an angle winder, obviously, and all the different bodies they told me that their wheelbases varied from about 69 to about 75 millimeters. So I've basically taken this, and we've got a little piece here that expands and contracts. And I've got this, it's kind of a tongue and groove thing here. So that sits in there, and it doesn't, there is chassis flex, but you can, once you've glued that in place, you can put some strips on top to stiffen the chassis up. So this is kind of a prototype. I made a bunch of these up, and I'm going to send them off to these guys and see what they like. And there's their angle winder. And I had this on my track, and it, I mean, with the BWA motor, I haven't really got it geared very strongly, but it drives pretty nicely. Anyway, that's kind of what I've been messing around with here.
And what type of material did you print? Sorry, Peter, what type of material did you print it in?
It's just generic PLA.
Are you going to design some kind of screw holes for the motor to be fixed, or just have people glue the motor?
You know what? The ones I printed, yeah, they're just use hot glue, but I have since gone in and revised this to allow you to use 2 millimeter screws in the end. Yeah, because you can see there, there's no way you're getting screws in there. But yeah, I'm going to revise it so that you can use screws. What else did I do?
Body mounts, are they generic enough that to fit all the different position there, or you need to kind of design different body mounts for the different bodies
Well,
that they
I
have.
just put, sorry,
I
I
saw-
just put the
yeah.
two body mounts in the center, one just behind the axle, one here at the very back. And then the guys, they said that's fine because they're getting a bunch of old Strombecker and bodies of different US RRC cars. So they'll be able to just, you know, put some mount tubes on here and JB weld them in, and away they go.
It's such a nice chassis for digital as well, man. I mean, I wish Rivoslot would have come up with something like that instead of, especially for the Group 2 cars, instead of the metal crap that they have. Anyway,
Hey, potential Pete to make tens of dollars.
Tens of dollars. It's gonna be it's gonna be raking it in with a tiny little rake. All right, thanks for showing that off, Pete. Definitely keep us up to date.
Thanks, guys.
Go ahead, Garth. What you got?
I got an update of some of the chassis junk that I've been working on. See if I can share that. See that okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, this is kind of the grandfather of all this, which is an SLS 3D nylon printed torsional I-beam chassis, okay, under a Ferrari F40 body. That's kind of how it started, right? That's what it looks like. That's the SLS version. And that's the underneath of it. And this car has been pretty extensively raced, and it's really good. And as a matter of fact, my guy that has been racing with me for testing cars with me for 6 months broke the track record with this thing yesterday. And Jeremy's been and I have been goofing around with some FDM versions of this style of chassis. Here's the first version of the PLA FDM version. And again, it's a Ferrari. That's the chassis. All right, this was the very first attempt, and originally was going to just put two little plates back here and to preserve the I-beam idea. But since then I've come up with another version of it that I like better, actually. But this has got a lot of weight in it, and then this car goes pretty well. Not quite as good as the it's not quite as flexy as the SLS chassis, but it's really quite nice for a PLA chassis. Right, that's what it looks like underneath. Okay, and then the next one, or this is underneath in the body, so it's very similar. This is the second version of the PLA F40.
Yeah. God, sorry to interrupt. Can I ask a quick question? Can you show the one picture back, the underside again for me? Is that a channel I see down the center?
This is an I-beam here, and this is just two.
My question
plates.
then would be, why have you put the ballast on top of the chassis when you've got that pocket in the underneath? Is it to retain the flexibility?
Yeah, that's the original idea, because it, like I said, it's a grandfather is the SLS I-beam, so
that looks like a perfect spot to put some weight if you want to.
Yeah.
Tungsten putty.
This is version 1, and it's pretty successful. We've tested it, and it runs really well.
Looks good.
This is version 2 of that idea. Okay, again, a F40 Ferrari with all the other stuff on it, and this is a little bit better version of that one. Okay, where the plates are made a little bit bigger to get weight in front of the motor and outboard. Okay, and then this idea here is more or less trying to duplicate what I've done with the Mauer plates on some of the other standard cars. Okay, where I've got thin pieces of lead up in this frontal area, okay? And this version is what recently went through an update, and Jeremy, who printed all the SLS versions of this, has just printed version 3 of this for me. And I should be getting that in a few days. And I've got some CAD pictures of that. But this car has been of the PLA version. This one's and it's very stiff compared to the SLS version, but it's really quite good considering the fact that there were a lot of compromises made, because printing it in FDM, the SLS CAD file had to be quite modified, okay, because the way we're printing this, and then if I can go flip it over, it's printed from the bottom. If you look at the bottom of this thing, this is ground zero, okay? Every one of these parts goes down to the build plate of the printer, okay? And that's where it starts its generation, okay? And
Garth, do you know the all up weight of what we're looking at there?
the what? Yeah.
Do you know the all up weight of what we're looking at?
Yeah, and I'll tell you that in a second, okay? There it is under the thing. The overall weight of this car, this one is, with all the weight that I've got on it, okay, and the body and the wheels and everything, it's 78 grams. Okay.
Okay.
And
do you know what your body shell weighs?
I don't, not offhand.
You don't. Okay.
But I can go backward to give you a little clue.
I'm sorry, Garth.
I'm going to go backward here to
what is FTM?
Hang on a second, just 1 second.
Okay.
This is the grandfather, okay, and the grandfather is the SLS version. Okay. All right. This guy, he's 68 grams. Okay. So the other one is 78 grams. And so this is, in terms of time, okay, this broke the track record at 21.07. Okay. And the third version of the PLA chassis, this guy is probably a good second and a half, almost 2 seconds slower. Okay. But man, when you consider the fact that this is just a garden variety everyday printing from a FDM printer. Now, granted, it's Jeremy is doing the printing, so it's quite, he's Mr. Technology, so it's quite a good print. Okay, it's amazing to me that these printers have come so far. Okay, this is the last part of this deal, which is now I've got these in the mail. This is the updates that I did to the third version. Okay, and there was some updates around the motor box here because we got a little bit of a problem with the D hole cracking. Okay, when you put the motor in here, and then there's also a pretty severe update in this front area here, and also these slots have been widened and wire holes have been put in here, and these gussets have been added, and a couple other gussets in the back, and that's what it looks like from the side. You can see the front. These two little wings here are new versions. Okay, these are which I want to be able to put weight here and here, and I want people to have the option of putting weight in here, and then you can put weight back here. And these are the two wire loops, okay, for the wires to go through, and then there's the wire holes on the side of these towers here, and that's another version. You see the towers here, okay, and gives you a good idea what's going on with it. Now here's the front, and this is just a blow up to show you what I did. These got wider. I made these wider. I was concerned about the ability of PLA to be able to tap holes, because I like to use M2 set screws here, both on the top and the bottom. So I widened the width of these towers I widened this side and I widened that side and brought it back into right into this thing here. So it's one solid piece. Also the holes, these holes for the where the wires go through had just a little bit of a kind of a washer type thing on this side here, and I widened that so I got a good wide, and then I made it extrude into both sides of the wall, so it's really solid. This was added on. These wings over here were added on. The rest of it is pretty much the same as it is. I did take out some of the chamfering of it, okay, because the chamfering, the more chamfering, the wider that you do when going up slopes and stuff, the PLA sometimes will show layer lines, although it's amazing to me how this does not show very many layer lines. It's printed at very, very slow speed and it's quite good. So that was the additions to the front. All right. Here's the motor box. Now we've been having some cracking problems right at this point here, right probably a layer line right there. And when I put so what I've done to try to alleviate that is I just cut this out into a U instead of having it to be able to try to snap the little flange that's on the can end of the motor underneath this to push this wall back. So it just slides in now. And then I increased the diameter of this hole just slightly and made this a little bit wider. And then one other little thing I did was I put a little chamfer right here because this was kind of modeled off the slot.it motor pod. And for some reason, some of these were rubbing against some certain brand of motors with the can would touch this. So I put a little chamfer on that. So that was the change to that. And then the other changes here are this wire connector thing where the wires go through the hole there. This was widened. Okay, the slot here is wider than it was on the original version. And this is another shot that shows you, I want to show this loop, okay? And what I learned from Jeremy is if I had made this loop, okay, just as a square or a rectangle, the problem would be when you're FDM printing, the FDM printer starts out way down at the bottom at ground zero of the build plate, okay, and it would have to go up and try to print this as a square underneath there, and it would want to make its own supports and stuff there, and probably come up with a kind of a crappy looking underneath. So what we've done is we take and we put an angle on the side of it, bring it right down to that crease there, okay, and then radius this off. And so when the FDM printer prints the layers, it starts out at ground zero here, and it's got a little slope to work on. So it can print that a lot better than it could printing out in the middle of the air it doesn't need any extensions or anything. Okay, so that's kind of what we're trying to do there, and that's just wires go through and through. And there's another example of the hole that's in the side. So the wires come from the motor down through here and then back through here and then into the guide. Okay, I think that might be the last photo. That's the last photo. Okay, so this version of the chassis is coming to me and in the mail. Jeremy printed it already, so I think it's going to be a little bit better, and hopefully it'll solve the cracking problem around the motor. That's all I got.
Garth, I got a
Come back to
suggestion.
Excuse
Yeah,
me?
me too.
Could you go back to the top view or the 3/4 view where you can see the whole chassis?
Hang on a second. I'm sorry.
This would take some work, but I think it would significantly improve the chassis.
Okay, where do you want to go to the back to
Just the
CAD
bare
file?
chassis. Yeah, towards the end, the bare chassis, right there.
Okay.
Yeah, the one before that.
Yep.
That the triangular piece, whatever you want to call it, the triangular piece that holds the lead. If you built that as a separate piece and then attached it with piano wire so it floats, I think the chassis would work significantly better.
There's lead at the front and the back, Jim. Which bit are
Yeah,
you referring to?
actually,
The whole thing, that whole triangular piece.
Oh, got you.
okay,
So
I
make it into a
actually
pan.
the way this might go, Jim, okay, is, or the way it was gonna start was, this was gonna be cut off right here. And that was gonna be cut off right there, okay? So that there was a weight plate back here and a weight plate back here, and weight plate there and weight plate there. And what you're saying is just cut this off and put a something, a piece of wire or something in there.
No, take from right behind where the front axle is.
Yeah.
And all the way back to the motor where it's kind of an L shape. That whole, if you want to call that a pan, that whole piece, detach it from the chassis and make it float. So the lead you're putting on the car, or the lead you're putting on the chassis, is now floating independent of the main chassis.
Yeah, I got you.
And it would probably make a significant improvement in the handling of the car. So it'd be more like a flexi car. Your 24 scale, you got a main chassis, and then you've got a floating separate piece.
Okay. Are you all set with that then?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody got any other questions or thoughts?
What you've lost, Garth, with this design compared to your grandfather SLS one is the disconnect between your front axle and your motor box. And you've basically tied them together and made the car a lot stiffer. And that's where
Well,
your two
then it's kind of up in the air as far as the I-beam, okay, and what the I-beam does, okay, because of the material, okay, all right, this material is so stiff compared to SLS nylon, okay, that even if I just cut everything off of it and just had the I-beam, if I got the, like going backward here, I've got a chassis that's version 1, this chassis right here. I got one of these chassis I fully intended to cut this, okay, at one point when I first did this file. And so Jeremy printed one and it had a failure right here. So what I did was I cut this off and just made it so it's just a straight I-beam. And comparing that to the SLS chassis, just in my hand, okay, this chassis, if I grab this with two hands and flex it, this car, I've often called this car the cat because it kind of grabs the track and it's so flexible and it's just nothing seems to bother the car at all.
That's the one that set the track record, right?
Yes, that's the one that set the track record.
If you took that chassis and added floating pans to it.
Yeah, I suppose you could, but that, again, that's an SLS printed chassis, and that, we're talking about, from a cost standpoint, okay, we're talking about like a whole lot of money, okay, versus FDM chassis, which is like no money, okay. So there's a big difference, okay, in pricing on this stuff. Now but what I was getting at was the flexibility of the material, okay. Now this thing, when I chopped it off, okay, and I grab it with my hands, it flexes, but man, it's so stiff just with the I-beam, okay, you know what I mean? So it's almost, it's like it's a really good stiff chassis, okay, it's sort of like it's up in the air. The whole idea behind this thing, testing it and goofing around with it it's a complete experiment. And almost every time we start goofing around with these cars together here, we are finding out that we're learning new stuff just about every time we run them. Just the other day, this car I was talking about the Jim, I was talking about the track record. This particular car, okay, was driving kind of weird, and it was scraping on the front part of the chassis. I have a Carrera track, and it was making a little noise and scraping and stuff. And so we pulled it off the track and did a very small amount of tuning to the front axle, the set screws on the top and the bottom. And we, raised the body height a little bit and did a little tuning on this front end, and bango, all of a sudden the thing broke the track record of, went from being a little rattly to just the track record of, just from a little bit of tuning. So it was, quite the experience to do that.
May I ask why you built the subsequent chassis up to be 10 grams heavier than this one?
To tell you honest God truth, the first, I had no idea that it was going to come out as good as it did. I was just trying to find out what a FDM printed chassis would look like in comparison to the SLS chassis. And basically it's, to me, for a guy like me, I got two cars. Okay. I got an SLS printed chassis that holds the track record, and another really great FDM chassis. Okay. And, what I'm trying to do here is, for me anyway, let me get rid of this thing here. It's trying to learn how to design chassis, okay, that I can have produced for low amounts of money. And I would like to be able to take this F40 chassis idea, okay, and some of the things I'm learning on it, and apply it to other hard body stock cars, like maybe Carreras or Scale Electric, or cars that don't run very well, okay, and be able to produce a chassis for very little money that will make a great looking slot car into a very fast, fun slot.
Yeah. For the moment, your challenge is to try to get your FDM prints to run as quickly as the grandfather.
Well, I'll tell you, they ain't far off. Okay. I mean, honest to God, Wayne, I'm kind of surprised by the whole situation as far as weight.
Yeah.
As good as
I've run some PLA cars in the past, and PLA is perfectly capable of being as good as anything out there when you get it right.
I don't know. I don't know if Jeremy, are you here? Jeremy's doing all the printing, so I'm just doing the CAD files, and then he does all the work.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm here.
I don't know diddly about printing.
What are your thoughts? So Jeremy's got one that he has used, that he's tested a little bit on a Ferrari 312 body. Okay, that we started goofing around with this idea on. Okay, maybe you can chime in on what you think about the whole PLA thing.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. I've tested like every material that we have available, from PLA to resin to SLS printing, and they're all very comparable. It's just mainly, wheels, tires, setup. I haven't found any one particular product that goes, oh my God, this is it yet.
Well, we've printed motor pods in both SLS. I'm going to say SLS because everyone knows what that is, and FDM. And you cannot use the same shapes in both circumstances, because the layer lines nature of FDM printing means that the material will split along those lines, just like you're finding right now. And therefore, with the other methods, you can get away with different shapes, thinner sections in particular. But there's nothing to say that. I mean, one of the best cars I've ever raced personally was an FDM PLA, and someone asked what FDM was. So, anybody want to clarify for him?
If I can clarify all kinds of things. What are you actually asking?
No, it wasn't me. Someone asked, what does FDM stand for?
Yeah, some of us aren't so aplomb with the all the different initials.
So SLS is a powder, and then the powder is in a machine, and a laser hits the powder and turns it into like hard plastic. That's the most expensive ones, like you would get from Shapeways. FDM printing is just a spool of plastic that kind of goes in like a hot glue gun. The plastic just pushes down and it builds that way. And then resin printing is the same thing. You put it in a vat of resin, and where the LCD screen lights up, it creates a layer, and then you get layer lines that way. They're just each a little different.
Yeah, the acronyms are
Acronyms.
FDM stands for Fused Deposition Modeling, which was originally coined for the filament printing, but those words can be applied to resin printing and powdered nylon printing and filament printing. I use FFF for fused filament fabrication for the filament printing, or I just say filament because most people understand filament. And I use SLS for the selective laser sintering, which is the powdered nylon thing. That's what SLS stands for. I usually just say, laser printing or laser nylon or whatever. SLS, most people understand SLS. If they don't, I say like Shapeways, because that's what people know Shapeways for. SLA is the resin, which is, I forget what that acronym stands for, but basically it's cured layers of liquid resin. So for the general populace, the easiest thing to say is filament, resin, or
laser sintering.
Laser sintered nylon.
I think an important note, Greg, is cost of machinery. An SLS nylon, correct me if I make a stupid mistake here, but I think the cheapest you can buy an SLS nylon printer is like 20 grand or something like that, wouldn't you say? Yeah. And I think a pretty decent FDM or PLA type printer, or FDM string printer, you can get a pretty damn nice one for in a $300 to $500 range. So, I mean, it's like I said, it's like world of difference in costing. Okay, you know what I mean?
Filament also is very inexpensive compared to resin and the powdered nylon. The main reason people think of, in my honest and humble opinion, or at least honest opinion, the main reasons people these days continue to deride filament printing is primarily because of absolute garbage prints that they've seen from 10 or 20 years ago, when the technology was, the consumer grade technology was still fairly new and people were figuring out how to get better quality out of them. And even continues these days when people get a new printer and they don't understand it well enough yet in order to produce a good quality print. I could name names, but that's not appropriate. The point is that it's still possible, even with brand new machinery, to produce a garbage filament print. But there are printers these days that have enough whiz-bang features that's less and less common. So more often these days, you're going to get a good quality print out of a machine if the file is designed for that kind of printing. And basically what Wayne was saying and what you've said and other people have said, with the SLS nylon, because of the way the technology works, you can get away with pretty much any design badness, right? If it's in the design, it's pretty much going to end up in the print, and it's just a matter of making things thicker or whatever. Whereas if you're designing for resin or filament printing, you really have to understand the technology of the printing machinery better in order to design things that A, are strong enough for the final product, and B, do not require tons of post-processing because of tons and tons of support. Like the angled thing you were talking about a while ago, that's well understood by most filament print designers, in that if you design a basically built-in support, then you don't have to provide support, you don't have to tear off support, you don't have to clean up support ugliness. Yeah, you're holding up a thing. I'll spotlight you. What are you holding
Yeah,
up?
I don't know if we're gonna even be able to see this. Can you see this at all?
I see.
Somewhat, yeah.
Yeah, I see your design.
Oh, you know what? It's going the other. Hang on,
You're mirrored,
I'm
but
mirrored.
we see it straight, so don't worry about it.
Okay. You see where it
Okay.
says chassis? Okay,
Chassis
there.
design,
This
and
is
then
our this is something that Jeremy and I are gonna try to communicate with each other when we do designs of this ilk, okay? And these are just kind of the parameters at which we start, okay? You know what I
okay.
mean? All these letters and stuff are this from here to there and there to there and here to there. And that's where we
Parameters.
start. So the idea is
Just on
that
just link to
uh,
the Zoom chat, yeah.
the idea is that, you know, I can send this to as a PDF to anybody, like in this case, it would be Jeremy. And he can have a body like say a Strombecker body or something, or some crazy body, like an Inco body, okay? And he can, as closely as he can replicate the measurements without me actually having the body in my hand, okay? If he can replicate some of these dimensions, that's where we get a base to do a FDM print. And then, you know, him being the printer, okay, I do a CAD file to start with. He does a print of it, and then so we have something in our hands, you know, to go from, okay, from the
So
base.
prototyping is the word that you're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, and we what we found out is that it's a you know, Jeremy, I could talk about this, but for me, it's kind of it's the coolest thing going, because I can dream up some crazy ass thing and do a CAD file and send it to him. He's got all these, you know, he's got resin and FDM printers and laser cutters and stuff, and he can quickly take that CAD file and create a prototype. And even if it's just a, you know, a stumble bum prototype or whatever, and now we have something in our hands to look at, okay, which is the base for a start. Okay, then we revise that, and you know, inside of days, or in a few days or a few weeks, we've got something that is, you know, rock and roll. Okay, where that would take months. Okay.
Yeah, so it's called rapid prototyping, which is what 3D printing was invented for several decades ago. Yeah. If you had your own printer, and like I said, you can buy a Chinese printer that has enough whiz-bang features that all you would have to do is turn some screws to put a couple of things together, plug it in and let it do its whiz-bang things, and then basically be able to just push print, and you would have it right there next to you. You would then, of course, need to learn the things that Jeremy and I have learned through, you know, online education, trial and error, rapid prototyping of our own designs, etc. Like those angled support things that you talked about earlier, ways to take your drawing and turn it into 3 dimensions.
Well, in essence, the things that you're talking about are things that we've learned. You know, Jeremy, you know, by doing the printing and having the expertise on, you know, he's explained to me, you know, well, gee, Garth, you're an idiot. You can't do that on a CAD file for an FDM print. You know what I mean? So I'm learning that I got to start off with a different exactly what you were describing, the difference between an SLS print and an FDM print.
Yeah.
There's a difference in the material and the design, okay? But
Yeah.
together, the two of us, are doing thing. I don't know. I'm having fun doing it. I hope he's having fun too. So
Yes, as I was explaining earlier, you need to understand the technology in order to design a thing to be printed.
yeah, understanding the technology and having an FDM and having a printer, that's not something I want to do.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so you've got Jeremy to do that. You used to have me, now you have Jeremy. There's, one of these days maybe you'll do it yourself. But yeah, there are lots of.
Sorry, I like your form that you've got there, Garth. That's a great idea.
And I'm sure Jeremy's already doing this, but if you design your model from the get-go with parameters, then he'll literally have a chart that all he's got to do is plug in the new numbers, and his model will instantly go and be, the same model except with all those new numbers. Right? He doesn't have
Yeah,
to go
and Greg, I got
edit the drawing itself and edit this and edit that and then go back and change this and change that. He can literally just parameterize his model, and then you put in the new wheelbase, you put in the new wheel track width, you put in the new thickness of something, you put in the new axle diameter, you put in the just boop, 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 boop numbers, and then
Those can be parameters for changing the scale, or parameters for making improvements, or just changes.
Yep. It's called parametric CAD, and that's one of the things that Fusion 360 is good at. I assume he's using Fusion.
I don't know. I'm sticking with my Rust Kit Adjusto jig. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. When I started with the CAD, I barely used parameters at all, and I still don't use them as much as I should. But when I know for sure that something is going to be the exact same thing except with slightly different numbers for this or that or the other thing, then I'll go in and I'll start off with parameters. I'll say, the width of this, the length of this, the diameter of this, all these things, just make the parameters. And then for my very first drawing, instead of putting in numbers, I'm putting in the width of the thing, the length of the thing, and it gives me a little chooser list to pick from all the parameters I've created. And if I get to a thing that I haven't made a parameter for, I go make the parameter for it, and then I put in the parameter, and then I go and add in the actual numbers. And then 6 months down the road, somebody says, "Oh, hey, Greg, I'd love this thing except for this, rather than what you did it for." Then all I've got to do is change a few numbers in the parameter list. It's very powerful.
On the next episode of 3D Printing Worldwide Slot Car Chat, we'll find out what happens.
Slot cars. All right, everybody got any more questions for Garth? Suggestions for Garth? Questions about educational opportunities? Okay, no other show and tell, I assume. It's time for Club Corner. Let's do some Club Cornering. I'm going to do a Club Corner thing. So I'm going to share my entire screen because I have multiple apps to share. All right, so eventually somebody's going to be able to see the screen. There we go. So the slot car race last Monday for my analog club took place on its very first polycar track of the club. So never ever raced on polycar. And basically none of the other guys have either. Good track, it's got just enough traction. I didn't need to treat my tires like we do for sport to get better traction. Nice and flat, so the cars weren't going like that down the straightaway because of the various undulations of polypropylene track like sport. Fairly decent track design, not too many hiccups. I did do a diagram so you can kind of see what the layout looks like. The trickiest bit, it runs right to left past the driver stations here at the bottom main straight. So then you go under the bridge. There's a half straight under the bridge. Going, that's not too hard. But then we have this wiggle section in here, which starts out as 3-4, 3-4, 3-4, and then it goes to 2-3 right there. So it's real easy to rock one side and then rock way too hard to the other side, and then understeer out of that turn. And oftentimes you end up right here, which is just out of reach of all the marshals, so a grabber tool has to be used. So that's fun. But then you get around to the lap count. Straight lap counter is right about here. And then you go over the bridge and down this middle straight. And then this is the other tricky bit right here, because that's an R2-3 combination. Very easy to overdrive too deep into that turn, because it just doesn't, you just don't think it's as tight as it really is. So you end up understeering there. Fortunately, that's right near the marshals and they can reach it with their outstretched arms. So not a big deal, but you know, any crash will slow you down. These are the results for that evening's racing. We raced it like we do at Russ's. So we had 3-minute 40-second heats with marshalling cars right back on the track with fuel stops. So it was very much like racing at Russ's, except on plastic track rather than routed wood. So me doing this well with my F40 against a bunch of Toyotas in this Revo slot group or GT1 race is because I didn't run out of fuel and didn't crash as many times as the other guys. Chris and Johnny and Mike are really good racers as long as they stay on the track. Chris and Johnny generally stay on the track pretty well. Mike stayed on a little bit more than he usually does this time, so he got up there in third place. My lap times, I had a best lap table as well, but I'm not gonna bother with that. I was like 6 seconds or something, and these fastest guys were like 5.2 or whatever. But because I just kept getting laps, I managed to get this 4th place. Not a lot of crashing. I think I won maybe 1 or 2 heats, but only because the other people on the track at the same time were just not as good as me, even though they had Toyotas. So, or they crashed too much, that kind of stuff. Anyway, good night of racing, and fun to have a new track in the rotation. And we now have 10 tracks in our club. So when we do a 10-week race for a series, we don't have to repeat any tracks. Whereas just a few short years ago, it was like maybe 5 or 6 tracks. So we would repeat most of the tracks in order to do a full series of races.
Was there a video of that race, Greg?
I did not take any video, but I'm sure other people did. I don't remember if Russ was there. I guess I could have looked on the
Is your car
the
really?
results. But yeah, I'm sure somebody took video. I'll try to get some video next time if nobody posts video about it.
What's the footprint of that truck or that layout? Do you know?
It's 8 by like 17. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Yeah, 8 by 17 / 17 and a half-ish.
Is there any plan to change that design, in particular at the end of that straight with the 2-3 combination, to change that 3-4?
I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let me load this up before I share the screen here.
I bet you thought of that already.
Is the table that it's on straight, square, round, or could he make a dog ear on that side where you could step closer to that?
No, it's pretty much square. So he's got one of the many monitors in that location. You can see it in the picture. Let me share my screen again.
It looks also good as a digital layout, potentially.
Yeah, so in that back corner, there's a TV screen.
Yeah, I see it. That's why I didn't see that TV screen last time. I thought dog ear right there would solve that.
But this is my redesign, which I like better for a variety of reasons. This is still 2 3s in here, but I think the fact that it's a full 90 degrees will make it easier for people to visually understand that they need to slow down a little bit sooner. The bridge was not meant to be swapped. It's still supposed to be the other way around, but I I still don't understand Ultimate Racer 3 and how to make things go above or below.
Up and down.
But yeah, I smoothed some of the things out. One of the things that bothered me was the turn above the bridge is 2-3, 2-3, 2-3, 2-3, 2. I'm sorry, no, 3-4. 3-4s for all the way until this very last piece, which is a 2-3. And that's not inherently bad, but I like it more parabolized. So in the update, I put the 2-3 right here. So you got 3-4s and then a little bit of tightness, and then 3-4s again coming out of there.
That looks a lot better.
You had input to the design.
What's that?
So you had input to the design of the track?
No, I did not. No, the original design was a creation of his own with Alan's help, because he bought everything from Alan. I'm sure Alan had his own spin on things. And he threw it together, and we went over a few weeks ago to kind of shake it down. And there were some things that needed to be fixed back then, but he basically just kind of stretched it out a little bit to fit the table better. And I had lots of ideas, and I was telling him, oh, hey, we could do this, that, and the other thing. And he's like, okay, yeah, whatever. And then he just
didn't happen.
Set that one in stone. So I just on Monday I took a bunch of pictures so that I could replicate his design and then modify it to tweak it like I showed.
Okay.
And sent it to him. I said, hey, if you ever are thinking about changing things up, here's an idea for you. He said, cool, thanks. We'll
see. Is your car really that outclassed by the other cars?
Not speed-wise, but cornering, right? So down the straight, we're usually neck and neck, right? Unless the guy's a bad driver, then I pull out ahead of him. But in the turns, I've got to go way slower than those. I mean, they're basically the Toyotas are basically LMP cars. They're super wide, super low, flat cars. The F40 is not those things. So yeah.
Can you speak more?
Go ahead.
Can you speak more about your experience with Polycar? Did you have any cars striking the rails or anything along those lines?
You mean like because the rails are proud?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how low you guys tend to run your cars, but Scalextric has got flush rails, and your wood tracks are obviously very low rails, and the Polycar is not that way.
I mean, I didn't have any problems. I don't remember anybody complaining about the cars. The only noise I recall hearing, other than the noisy Revo slot cars, were some people had put in the wood guides, and some of those wood guides were hitting the joints in the track. They weren't slowing down or anything, but you could hear a lot more clickety clacking on those cars.
Yeah.
But it was definitely the guides in the slot, not like the noses hitting, not like the chassis hitting the track joints, the rails of the track joints or something.
It's still friction.
Yeah.
It's got a deeper slot than. Has it not got a deeper slot than Scalextric Sport? I don't know.
Yeah. Sport has a surprisingly deep slot. But yes, I think it's like maybe 0.5 mil or something deeper. I did some measurements a long time ago. I posted a thing where I had literally measured every single piece of track type I had from the top of the rail to the bottom of the slot. And it was actually surprising. The numbers were surprising. So yeah, I think it's a little bit deeper, but not tons deeper.
Yeah, not as deep as a Carrera, for instance.
Yeah. SCX, the SCX universal track based on their digital track, that had a surprisingly deep slot. Really? Okay. And Ninko wasn't as deep as I thought it would be. Carrera wasn't as deep as I thought it would be. But yeah, they're a lot more comparable than you think. But yeah, 0.5 mil there, 1 mil here, 0.5 mil there.
I think in Ninko it's 7 mil, right?
You're gonna make me dig up that post, but yeah, I don't remember the numbers.
7.2 is my measurement.
For sport?
No, for Polycar.
What's your measurement again, Mike?
7.2 millimeters.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so basically it's comparable to Ninko. And I think Carrera should be 8.
I didn't ask him how many power taps he had. I'm sure he had at least 1 or 2 or 3. But it's also a freshly built track, relatively speaking. So it's hard to say what power is going to be like in the long run, but it was pretty good. I couldn't feel any power drops anywhere that I recall.
Which kind of tires you guys are using on this class?
We're running the Revo Slot foam rubber, sponge rubber.
Okay, and did you notice any kind of extra wear on the tires?
I have not done an examination of my car. I expect there to have been a little bit more than sport or wood. The one main difference that I'd mentioned this was that I didn't feel the need to put any treatment on the tires to increase traction, which would have softened that as well.
What's the approximate lane length of that layout?
That's a good question. How do you figure that on Ultimate Racer?
It's kind of nice.
I'm live measuring the Ninko track, and it's not as deep as I thought it was. I'm live measuring the depth of a slot on a Ninko track, and it's not as deep as I expected it to be.
Yep.
Every dimension I'm finding here is in the high 6s and not as much as 7. But it's not a brand new piece of track, and it's not a good piece. But they're not 7. They might be spec'd at 7, but this one in my hand is not.
Okay, so DeJuan, this track is just shy of 65 feet per lane.
Cool.
64.85 feet per lane.
I was gonna say 22 meters, so 65 feet. Yeah, 20 meters. Wow. So actually 19.8 is less than I was expecting.
I'd have had to get out a calculator to figure that out. So
Yeah.
I already opened on my Google shit, so basically, yeah.
3 feet per meter.
Something-ish, but not exactly. All right, any other questions on that? Hearing none, moving along. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, let me get my share up.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. I thought. Well, crap. I think this is it. Yeah. So we had a couple of races this Monday. We had missed last week. So I did stock cars for the first one, and I modified the Torino Talladegas by putting in some super fat rubber tires, and now they're pretty comparable with the urethane Dodges. The Mopars, for some reason, are slightly lower and a little bit faster cornering. So compensatingly, I put the rubber tires on them to make them fairly even. And it seemed to work, even though I won with a Mopar. But it was a very close race, and you can see Shiggy was right on my tail. He was just over a lap behind, just barely a lap behind, and it seesawed back and forth for the most of the race. But I managed to win by getting better fuel mileage. He's much more of a on-off racer, and I'm a more gradual racer, and so I've discovered that in most of the instances, I can beat him if I've got an equal car or a lesser car if I manage my fuel properly. So this was the case with the stock cars. They're all stock motors and pretty much even across the board as far as weight goes. Plenty of weight on the bottom for sure, and modified. And the interiors have been modified too. So, but yeah, it was a good, fun, close race. You can see that was, the times there. I think, yeah, I had 2/10 on him on the fastest lap during the race, but it was pretty good. And then the second race I did supercars, and we did. Unfortunately, you can see the order is missed here because I had forgotten to turn off practice, or qualifications. So I got 125 laps of qualifications. So I got to remember to do that. There's a couple things that I'm still working with the software on this, and it's my old brain doesn't remember all the things I have to do. I would like to find out some way that I could store these, that I can just run the series and be fine without having to change anything. But I have to go back and turn the auto track call and that kind of stuff on. Now that I know where it is, it's much easier. I have a little cheat sheet that I do, and it's like, oh yeah, there it is. Anyway, we raced supercars. We had two Paganis, Scalextric Paganis, and a Scalextric 4GT, modern 4GT, not the GT40. The tweener. There were 3 4GTs, the basic GT40s from the 60s, the second generation 4GT, and then the latest 4GT, which is a different, the GTLMs and that kind of stuff. Anyway, this was the second gen 4GT that Scalextric had brought out, and they were really pretty close. The Paganis, well, actually, the 4GT set the fastest lap. I was, Shiggy qualified first. He had the 4GT, and I was behind him by about, I think, half a tenth. So it was pretty comparable. And the fastest of the two Paganis was given to Joel, fastest and easiest to drive. And he's still learning, so he's got a lot of offs, and that's where it kills it most of the time. But at least he beat the ghost cars.
Hey,
no, he
Mike,
didn't. He didn't.
Mike, Joel needs a nickname.
Okay. I'll put that to him and see what it is. At any rate, he's learning, but he's getting there, and he'll be pretty good one day. But this was not quite as close. I had Shiggy by 3 laps, and fuel mileage was again some of a factor here. So, but it was great fun, and everybody left happy. So that's all I got.
Mike, so that stuff down there that you have like a race 003944. Does it mean that one of your races is 40 minutes long?
Yeah.
Holy camole. Okay. 125
well,
laps.
Because that includes offs.
Yeah, I know. So you guys have a lot of
we do 125 laps.
Yeah.
So with an 8.5 second lap, it takes a while. So yeah, but we run 40 roughly 40 minutes. Some of the faster cars, it depends upon the speed of the cars. So they're if you get a LMP cars or some of the hypercars now, you're talking they're doing less 7-second laps or 7.2, something like that. And it goes by much quicker. It's about 25 minutes then. So, but with the slower cars, it's about roughly 40 minutes by the time you get track calls and walking around and stuff like that.
So either you or Greg have like a truck, what's called it? We have like a design on one of these truck software.
For Mike's track, I have his track on my track power. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe if you can share with me at one point. I mean, via email and stuff. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, that's all I got.
Let's see if I can find. Oh, there we go. Mike Maurer 01.
I did it.
Here we go. This is. I don't think this is updated. I think you made some changes since I did this. Come on. Seriously? Come on. All right, let's try that again. Track power, share. There we go. Mike, is that? Made some changes, I know.
I think, yeah, in the beginning at the end of the corner there, I softened that up a bit so there's not, so there's a little easier entry. And I put a squiggle on the outside. You can't see where I'm pointing. Yeah, right there where you're looking at. Yeah, at that point there's now a slight squiggle in it.
Can you hit the measurement lane lane measurement?
Well, they are not equal for sure. The inside lane is shorter by about 2 feet.
74 and a half.
I think it's, 74 and a half, if I remember correctly. 21 meters.
That's the outside.
No, 23 meters, I think. Yeah, outside.
Okay.
Yeah. Stop. There we go. All right, go ahead, Jim.
Well, we had some big racing this last weekend out in California. And I'm going to let Dennis talk about the race. I think he was going to talk about the scale auto race. So I didn't go, so I'm not going to talk about it much. But since I didn't go there, I decided to go out and race 24 scale. So Ted Essie and I both 37. Well, Ted's raced 24 scale. I used to race 24 scale in the past. But we went over to Fast Track Hobbies, and I borrowed a car from Richard Matthews, who's here on the right, and was able to get a win. So I'm now a 24 scale racer.
Okay, Jim, I have to say, though, as a winner, you look not happy there.
Well, the prize money check hadn't cleared yet.
Ah, okay. Oh, no, I thought maybe they were paying you in Canadian dollars. There you go.
Well, that could be. It was like $1 million Canadian. So, yeah, I'd go to McDonald's.
He's already
lucky
with champagne.
Yeah.
You should smile more.
So that was Saturday. And then I'm going to let Dennis talk about this race because I wasn't there. But what I do want to mention, this is the A main. 5 of those guys are from Motown.
Wow.
So Motown did good. Ian, obviously, he won the race. Mike Stahl, the third guy in, he's an old-time racer, and he went to the Worlds in Italy last year for 24 scale, but he's just started racing 24 scale fairly recently. Braden from Motown. Frankie, a regular at Motown, I think first time in an A main at Electric Dreams, and Herman. So, yeah, we did good. I wasn't there, but we did good. My next trip down to Electric Dreams will probably be the slot at Nationals. And there's there's going to be some out-of-towners, maybe somebody from Tennessee who we all know. So we'll see what happens.
Oh, cool.
Rumors.
goodness.
You know how rumors are.
They'll
Well,
let anybody in.
I have to
They'll
say-
let anybody in.
Exactly.
So, Jim, I have to say that's a really encouraging photo because there are 3 of those folks that lowered the median age significantly.
Well, at the slot at Nationals last year, I was 3rd. Braden was 2nd. Ian won. Their combined ages are still 10 or 12 years less than me.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, which is good.
You
and
had
bad,
too much spare
obviously.
time in the pit, in the paddock, to work that out, Jim.
Yeah. And Todd is a closet Northern California guy because he has family up here. He's come up and raced with us even at a club race once or twice. So it was a NorCal domination. What can I say? Sorry, Dennis.
No, you don't have to apologize to me.
I was very happy to see. I don't know what you call this. I guess it's the beam of winners or whatever. But a friend of mine sent this to me, so I'm included on that. So
yeah, there's a
very,
kind of
very
like
happy to see
a wall of champions. That's the floor girder of the new mezzanine floor, and Marco's putting up all the race winners' names along there. So
yeah, that was
there'll
cool.
be
to
others
see.
coming along, sure.
That
And
is
to
cool. I
me,
like that.
that's one of the things that Electric Dreams is doing. You know, they're doing a lot of cool stuff, but there's a lot of little touches, like giving Dennis that place to work and having the logo up top of it, the jumbotron over this track, and so there's a lot of stuff you don't even hardly notice until you get there and you go, "Wow, everything is done first class." So anyway,
Yeah, we have to call that corner Harry Potter Dennis.
Yeah.
So anyway, looking forward to going back to Electric Dreams, but it may be a while. I'm gonna try to get down there once before the slotted nationals, but we'll see.
Okay.
I want to come down and run my Can-Am car, quite frankly, because
Yeah,
it's really good. Get down there and run it. In terms of future races, we've got the GT3 Proxy in probably a week or so. The cars were mailed to me Monday from Canada. It'll probably take a week, I'm guessing, to get from Canada to California. And so we will have round one of the GT3 Proxy at High Sierra Speedway in, give or take a week and a half or 2 weeks. So that's going to be a big deal. We've had a couple proxies before, but I think this is probably one of the premier proxies. My friend Glenn Schneiderman, who is GS No Point, is orange car there. His bribe check did not clear, so he will not be winning. And so we'll see. Courtney is in this, and so there's some really fast cars. Yona's in
And
this.
what about Courtney's check? Did that clear?
Courtney sent cash.
Oh, okay.
So Yona was the second fastest qualifier in round zero. I can't remember the guy's name, but from the Czech Republic, PKZ Racer, whatever his name is. He was top qualifier in the round zero, which they have before the actual first round of the race. And you had to qualify to get into this field. There were, I think, 10 sit-outs from previous winners and whatever the parameters were that were actually in the race. And I think there was like 28 or so entries that fought it out for the last 18 spots. My numbers may be off, but if you were not a sit-out being a previous winner or whatever, like I said, the parameters were, you had to qualify just to get into this. So it's some seriously fast GT3 cars. So definitely looking forward to running them in a couple weeks.
Well,
that's it for me.
Anybody else got any?
Well, no, I could talk about the rest of the Scale Auto weekend.
Go for it.
I don't have any pictures or anything right now because I was racing all weekend and didn't really think about it. Saturday we ran the 132nd scale cars up on the front track, the Cunningham 6-lane track. A really difficult day for everybody because we all struggled for traction. Because this was the first race since we redid the track, and a couple of things I think happened. One was because of the new braid. First and foremost, our non-magnetic braid, and that I think has done two things. It's the first thing is that any downforce that you used to be getting out of the motor in the car is gone, right? And even a little bit helps sometimes. So everybody was struggling with that. But I think also, and this is something that I would have to go and measure, the fact that magnetic braid is basically a steel wire core with copper plating and then tinning on the outside, whereas the regular braid is copper all the way through, means that the braid's resistance is lower, and the cars on the regular voltage that we normally use on that track, which is 12.5, the cars felt a lot more lively. They had a lot more bottom end, and a lot of us struggled quite significantly to get our cars to drive the way that we are already used to driving them on that track. Everybody was making big changes to controllers, turning things down, trying to soften up the response of the car. That said, Ian Douglas went out there as the very first qualifier. He was first up, and he laid down a time that nobody touched for the rest of the day. He was the only one in the first round of qualifying to get underneath 6-second lap. I had a terrible qualifier. Ended up in the very, very first very, very first heat. Had the luck to be drawn for the first stint of that first heat on yellow lane, which was the qualifying lane. So I at least had traction the very first round of that heat, and I took 5 laps out of everybody because the rest of the track was, even despite giving everybody a 1-minute warm-up, there was just no traction on the other lanes. And then as I went through them, I obviously had a little bit of benefit from at least one guy running the lane before me, and then it picked up from there. But I found eventually a way to get the car to work, and effectively what I had to do was in between heats was to rub some NSR oil into the tires and wipe it off, and do it after in between every heat. And then towards the end of the race, I started to get some decent traction back. But as a result of that, of course, I didn't make it into the second round of anything on Saturday. And so I was home for dinner. And my wife was quite happy about that. I don't think I was, but anyway.
Yeah, but Dennis, didn't you win a heat race?
I won the heat race. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won the heat race.
Yeah,
And,
don't forget that.
That was fun. So at least I went home with a little sticky plaque that says heat winner. You
don't bump up from that then, Dennis?
Don't what?
No. You don't bump up?
No, there's no bump ups because what we do is we run all the heats, and then it's a matter of total laps.
Yeah.
To see who the next lot are. So it's not a positional race. It's a laps race. And I just did not do enough laps to get out of the really low down, and I certainly didn't get into the top 12, which is what I would have needed to do to get into the second round of qualifying.
Yeah, Dennis,
anyway,
that needs to be addressed, especially on a 2-day race where some people can't make qualifying and they just come in and run in the quote slow heat. But you're SOL if you're in that first heat and the track's not cleaned off. That needs to be addressed.
There were a couple of things. The first thing is that it's quite possible that the tires that were specified for this race were not ideal. We used the gray Scale Auto AS20s, and they didn't work really very well, unless you had discovered some secrets, which I only discovered late on.
3 people did.
And yes, I think there are a couple of other things. Number one, if you've been testing on the track for 2 days, then you really shouldn't clean it just before qualifying, because that just took all the rubber off, and we had a lot of trouble with that. Anyway, the cream rises to the top as always, and the top 6 guys that were in that main event drove really, really well all day, and their cars were good, and they found that whatever they needed. And the final was a really close event. It was, I think, less than a lap between first and second at the end. And so it was a good race, but there were a couple of computer issues during the day with the track not switching off when it needed to switch off and not counting laps, which I think have finally now been identified as to what was going on with the Lapmaster system. And but after all the problems, they managed to get the race done, and you saw the results you saw the drivers in Jim's photo. And then on the Sunday, we ran on the new old Nyland track, the 8-lane ex Buena Park, ex Hesperia, ex all the way back to someplace in North California, Pleasant Hill, I think it was, where it was first set up back in the day. On that 8-lane flat track, we ran a 1/24th scale endurance race, 4 hours for the Scale Auto new hypercars. So everybody had either an Orica or an Acura. Those are the 2 cars that are out at the moment. Qualifying was close. There were 8 teams. We ran 10-minute heats on each. So we ran each lane 3 times. We ran through the 8-lane rotation 3 times to get 240 minutes of racing. There was less than 2% difference between first and second at the end of 2,000 odd laps. So it was pretty close at the top. There were a couple of fairly close races down the way a little. My team members and I managed to come in fifth eventually. There we go. Thanks, Greg. That's the track, and that was at the start. Looks like it, yeah. We
How
had
did you run that then? How did you do driver changes and things?
It was they were 10-minute heats, and each driver just drove his 10 minutes. And then when the lane changes were going on, which was done by the race director, he changed the cars on the lanes, and in that time, then the drivers changed over.
Okay, so it was 4 hours of 10-minute sectors.
4 hours of 10-minute sectors, yes.
And you changed lanes every sector?
Every sector.
So you went through you went through a pretty big rotation then. You must have gone through the lanes several times.
We went through the lanes 3 times, yeah.
3 times, yeah.
3 times. This is the new look under the bridge going into the donut that Carlos has put up lights and a camera under the bridge. It looks really cool.
That's a great shot.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? It's very smart. It's coming out here just to the left of the fellow with the bald patch.
There's the jumbotron on the top too.
Yeah, there's cameras over the top. There's I think 10 cameras on that track.
The jumbotron, he's pointing to it now.
Oh yeah, the jumbotron. Yeah, up in the middle. Yeah, very nice. Anyway, it was a good race. Our car ran the full 24 10 minutes each on one pair of brakes, one set of tires, and the only pieces of plastic that we lost were the little winglets that are at the front of the car, those little strakes that they have around the edges of the nose at the front of the car. The rest of the car was pristine. The mirrors were still in place. The windscreen wiper was still in place. Everything.
Your rear wing was still on?
The rear wing was still on. There were only 2 cars running at the end of the race with the rear wing. And
so you should have won the race.
Ours was one of them. I lobbied for a 50-lap bonus for that, but the reality of the whole deal was that those cars lose their wings quite easily, and it's very difficult to get them back and keep them on. And so that whole rule about not counting laps without a wing was kind of disregarded. It was scotched, yeah. However, we all had a good time. We qualified 5th. We came in 5th. The 2 guys who ran with me were Eddie Shorer and a fellow by the name of John Torrey Anderson, who is a guy who actually went to high school with Phil Nyland, after whom the track is now named. Phil and Brian Womack and Torrey were all at school together here in Southern California, and they all raced slot cars in the 1960s. So they are part of that what used to be called the Golden Age before the real Golden Age started a couple of years back. And they ran along with Mike Stubbe and John Sukas and Terry Schmidt and Mike Morrissey and all of that lot. And so they're still around and still racing, and they did well. Torrey Anderson won a couple of the heats that he drove in. Eddie Shorer won a couple of the heats that he was in. He and Mel Conroy had an amazing dice when they were down on the 2 inside lanes, black and purple, which are the 2 fastest lanes on that track. I don't think that for 10 minutes neither of them came off, and I don't think that they were ever more than 2 cars lengths apart. I think Mel got by Eddie once, and then Eddie took it back, and they ended as they started, like, about a foot apart. It was really good. So it was a fun day. We had similar computer issues during the enduro that we had during the individual races on the Saturday, which it seems has been narrowed down to an effect that happens when, by mistake, there are two instances of the software open on the computer, trying to talk to one set of hardware. For some reason or other, pressing buttons on the keyboard launches or pressing the wrong keys on the keyboard when you're reaching for the space bar to stop a race causes some problem and for some reason or other has caused a second instance of the software to open on the computer. I think we're still going to do a little bit of more experimenting to see whether that's exactly what it is. But once we had gotten rid of the rogue session or the rogue instance on the computer, we had no more trouble. It's all the Lapmaster system, the Danish one from Carsten Grunemann, who's been on this call before. Other than that, it worked fine. That was that. And so we were out of here by about 5 o'clock on Sunday. And I think everybody had a good time. Certainly.
How much time did you spend actually racing on Saturday? Shucks.
He locked up.
Yeah, I did. There
was practice Saturday morning, and then 3 rounds of qualifying.
I think that will be good.
Oh, there he is back.
Oh, the 3 rounds of qualifying it's kind of interesting. What happens is everybody gets a minute, and then the top 12 get to go again, but they get 2 minutes each. And then the top 6 out of that get to go again, and they get 3 minutes each. And it's all on the same lane. So by the time you're finished, you've had, 30 something plus 12 plus 24 plus 18. So, you're looking at about an hour of the running on that one lane, which is why it's in so much better condition than the other lanes when you start to get into the elimination heats.
What's the purpose in qualifying people and then qualifying them again and then qualifying them again?
Make it look like
seems to waste a lot of the day.
It's when you're running a 2-day event where the qualifying is 1 day and the racing is the second day, it fills the day a little bit. It makes for a bit of excitement. It's kind of like the Formula One Q1, Q2, Q3 process. It's something Marco invented, and it seems to be fairly popular. I've only ever gotten into the second part of qualifying one. Even then, once all that qualifying's done and you run the elimination heats, you run all the way through, and then there's still a bump, like a bump heat, because not everybody gets straight into the semifinals, because the first three qualifiers, the top 3, get straight into the semifinals. The next 7 are taken from the heat winners. So it's 6 heat winners plus the fastest. The 7 fastest, and then we give from 8 to 13. We give them another heat, which is called the bump heat, and then the top 2 from that get into the semifinals to make 12 in the semis. And then you run the 2 semis, and then it's the top 6 out of that go into the main event. So that's how those races are run. It's just a different, everybody has their own way of doing these things.
What did you actually run? You ran 18 minutes in the race you qualified for, but 1 minute to qualify for it?
I ran 1 minute to qualify and 18 minutes in the race, yeah. That was my day.
A 19-minute day. Yeah, on Sunday.
On Sunday, I got
an hour and 20.
Yeah, like an 80-minute race. Yeah. an
Yeah.
hour and 20 minutes. We divided it up pretty evenly, and we actually didn't quite run exactly even. I think I ran one heat less, and Eddie ran one heat more than our fair share, because he was driving better than I was, and so we let him run. It was enough for me.
Oh gosh, yeah.
What we do at Motown is we modify that a little bit. So we take the top 2 out of qualifying, go to the semis.
Yeah.
We run the heats. The top 10 out of the top 8 out of the heats go to the semi.
Yeah.
And instead of a bump heat, we do a full round robin of everybody that's left, and we call it the last chance.
Oh, okay.
So in our racing, everybody there gets a minimum of 2 18-minute races plus qualifying.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice.
It takes
Yeah.
longer, obviously, because instead of a bump heat, you've got a full round of everybody else. But
Yeah.
I personally like it better.
I mean, it's a fair old commitment to go to a 2-day race meeting with the potential for 19 minutes of driving, isn't it?
Well, that's why we do a last chance qualifier for that specific. The last chance qualifier is not really to give people a last chance to qualify. It's to give the whole field another 18-minute run.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the real purpose for it. It does the other
Mhm.
2. But now everybody has 3 chances to make the semi: qualifying, out of the heats, or the last chance.
Yeah. Not a bad way to do it.
So, but it
Must
does
admit.
take longer.
Sure.
Dennis, when you guys doing the team in Durham,
Yeah.
do you have the flexibility of not evening out the times for each of the team members, or is it pretty open? Or
It was pretty open.
Mhm.
Therein lies some debate, I think. There were teams that were 3 people, there were teams that were 4 people, there were teams that were 5 people. So, unless somebody is going to be really anal about recording everything, it's difficult to police who does what. With 3 guys, it was nice and easy for us, with 4 guys, it was fine. With 5, you're gonna get to a point where some people are going to run more than others anyway, because there's no way you're going to change a driver under green when you can change them during a lane change. So everybody's going to run those full 10-minute heats, and with 5 drivers, somebody's going to lose out on one heat somewhere.
Well,
5
as soon as
drivers.
you have a compilation of drivers, you inevitably have a quickest driver and a slowest driver.
Yep.
And so it's just being part of a team. It's exactly the same for us with our digital races and particularly our longer ones. Sometimes the team has to make decisions that start one way and end a different way, because strategy can develop based on how you're doing in the race.
You've got to decide, you've got to let your heroes drive. If there are no rules about it being divided up evenly, then the heroes get to drive a lot more, particularly if they're in a tight race with one of the other teams. So, personally, I like to see at least some kind of minimum set for that each driver has to do, and then, in a 4-hour race, and you've got 3 drivers, maybe each guy has to drive an hour, and then you can do what you like with the other hour, whether you give it all to one guy, or whether 2 guys share it, or whether you split it up into 20-minute batches, is then up to the team. But there were no rules like that this time around. It was just a matter of, try to keep it as even as you can, and most teams did.
Yeah, I think the way to do that, Dennis, to be, I don't know, fair, but is every stint you have to make a driver change, and you go through in order. So if you have a team with 3, you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, so forth. And then the last 2 or 3 stints would be open, so that you could put your fastest driver in at the end if you wanted to.
Yeah, something like that.
Just my thoughts.
But again, in order to do that, if you make that kind of rule, you need to be sure that you are going to enforce it and back it up. and therefore you need people who are going to keep record of all of those things.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that just adds to the number of people that are involved in having to run the race. But yeah,
We've stayed away from that with digital racing because it's just impossible to monitor and prove anything really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And mistakes are inevitably made when you try to do it. So I mean, on behalf of the organization and the team, either one can make mistakes and then get into disagreements about what the outcome should or shouldn't be. And there's just no need for it. It's just part of being in a team. You share it out how the team decides, and sometimes a team's decision is unpopular with an individual, but you do what you can.
Yep, you do. Anyway, it was, as I say, it was a fun event. A lot of new guys were exposed to 1/24 scale racing and foam tire racing, and that's good. You know, there were quite a few bad crashes and quite a few cars that were looking very, very secondhand by the end of the race. You know, those bodies are not particularly strong when you have a 210-gram car that's traveling at the speeds that those things would. Not that they're that fast, but you know, when they come out of the slot, they don't stop. Right?
They're that heavy, Dennis? I didn't realize that.
210 grams. Yeah.
Wow.
They continue trundling along at whatever speed they were doing until they hit something that's a little less movable than they are.
Anyone got a clear picture in their mind as to why a 1/24th car weighs more than twice the weight of a 32 scale?
Yeah, it's called density.
It's all metal.
Well, they carry the same motor, don't they?
But it's the rest of it's called density, right? You're going up in volume, not just in dimension.
Yeah. So 3 times. Yeah.
And they're not plastic chassis.
Nope. No, they were not plastic chassis. They're steel. They have a steel base plate and and some carbon fiber pieces in them.
There you go.
And it was good. They were fun to drive.
When we tested them at Motown, they were running roughly the same lap times as our fast GT3 cars.
Yeah.
So they're not slow. I mean, if you compare them to what we run in 32nd scale, they're not slow.
No, they're not. No, they didn't look it.
They run those times because they are actually pretty good through the turns. You really don't need to slow very much.
But your foam tires are the reason for that, aren't they?
Oh, the foam tires make a big difference, but the cars handle really well, you know, for what they are. And yeah, but it was surprising. I think one team had some motor trouble, and had to change motors, but the rest of us all ran the 4 hours on one motor. Everybody ran the 4 hours on one set of tires that I know of. There might have been somebody changing tires. And towards the end, you could feel a little bit of, or you could see it on the lap times that we had dropped a couple of tenths by the end of the race because of the smaller diameter tires at the rear of the car. That you were losing a little bit of straight speed. The interesting thing was that they have very hard front tires, but the front tires were actually wearing on some of the cars. Some of us used an independent front end, but some of the guys didn't. And I think the guys who didn't, who just had a solid front axle, were actually wearing the outside tire a little bit, or the inside tire. I'm not sure which one. But the tires, they lasted way better than I expected them to. So
I'm not surprised about any of those comments. Quite honestly, we race 24 hours with rubber tires on the front of our cars on Ninko track, and for the most part, unless you get something severely wrong, like the wrong tire compound, or you don't glue coat them, then they don't wear, and we're on a much rougher surface. our tires in the 24-hour race, the G25s.
Mm.
Well, we managed to get our pair, a pair, to last for 10 hours last year. It's all circuit dependent, but likewise, we get 24 hours and more out of a single motor. In nearly every case, it's rare to have to replace a motor. And I've run a race meeting this weekend with this Scale Auto. What's it called?
Yeah,
a
no,
baby,
that's the motor that we were using, but of course, remember, it's now driving a 210
a
gram
bigger
car.
Yeah. And this
Are you
one,
sure
one's
that it's the
done.
same motor? I don't think it's the same motor. Maybe it's the Baby Sprinter 2, which I think is a bit more powerful than that.
This one's an 18K.
Oh, okay, yeah. The one that we were running is at 20. It was at 22.5, I think. Yeah, it was the number 2 version. Yeah, I just saw the same green and black sticker. That's why.
Yeah. It'd be great if that was if that was the case.
All right,
but this one's done hours and hours and hours.
Jesus Christ! I'm gonna end the live stream, but we'll continue chatting until next week. Everybody, right? Bye. Clicking the end button now. Bye.
Okay, sorry about that. I didn't expect to.
No, I just can't interrupt. My system will not let me interrupt.